In the heart of southern Africa, hidden among rolling granite hills and ancient rivers, lie walls of stone built without mortar, untouched by modern tools, rising over 30 feet high, curving through the landscape in precise patterns, enclosing massive enclosures and a solitary stone tower at its center. For centuries, outsiders refused to believe the city existed, claiming it was created by foreigners, ignoring the knowledge of local communities who called it sacred. Great Zimbabwe stood as a monument to human skill, organization, and authority, surviving conquest, lies, and erasure. Its story of construction, trade, governance, and spiritual power challenges everything you thought you knew about African history. The city is burning. Constantinople, jewel of the Byzantine world, greatest city on earth, is a landscape of fire, smoke, and chaos. From the heights of the imperial palace, the streets stretch like rivers of fire, blackened by ash and streaked with red from the flames consuming wooden homes and merchant shops. Smoke rises into the cold January sky, thick, acrid, carrying with it the screams of the dying and the frantic cries of those still running. It is 532 AD, and the Nika riots, an uprising unlike any the city has ever seen, have engulfed the empire in a chaos so complete it feels like the end of the world. At the heart of this inferno, in the gold-draped, marble halls of the imperial palace, the man who rules the Romans, the most powerful person alive, stands frozen. Emperor Justinian, his hands trembling, looks around at the men who have sworn loyalty to him, his generals, his advisors, his treasury officers, all competent, all experienced, all terrified. And in this moment, faced with the roaring tide of insurrection, the empire he has labored his entire life to build seems fragile, nearly impossible to save. Your Majesty, Belisarius, the emperor's greatest general, says softly, his voice steady despite the distant roar. We have ships in the harbor, gold, chests, everything portable. We can leave, re-establish the court in Thessalonica, return once the city has cooled. Justinian's eyes flick toward the harbor, and he sees the white masts of the imperial fleet swaying in the icy waters, waiting. Escape is possible. Survival is possible. Civilization, as he knows it, could continue elsewhere. But the cost, his pride, his legacy, his empire would be total. The council murmurs in agreement, each man laying out practical strategies for survival. One by one, they outline the best escape routes, the safest ships, the means to preserve the treasury. Each argument is rational. Each is terrifyingly convincing. And then she speaks. Theodora, silent until this moment, sitting quietly in the corner, observing, calculating. The former actress, the woman who clawed her way from the gutters of Constantinople to the palace of the most powerful man in the world, rises. She is calm, composed, every inch the empress she has become, and yet every word that leaves her mouth is a spark, igniting a fire in the hearts of those who hear it. If flight were the only means of safety, she says, her voice cutting through the panic like a blade. Still, I would not agree with you. The room falls silent. All eyes turn to her, not in awe, not in fear, but in recognition. Recognition of a presence that commands respect, that refuses to negotiate with panic. She continues, stepping closer to Justinian, her hand brushing against the imperial purple that drapes the emperor's shoulders, a symbol of the authority she has fought for decades to share. Once a man has been born into this world, it is inevitable that he should die. But for one who has reigned, it is intolerable to become a fugitive. Every word lands like a hammer on stone. This is not a plea. It is a judgment. It is history itself speaking through a voice that has known despair, humiliation, and survival. She does not look at the advisors, does not appeal to their logic. She looks only at the emperor, the man whose hesitation could undo everything. May I never be without this purple robe. May I never live to see the day when those who meet me do not call me empress. If you wish to save yourself, my lord, there is no difficulty. We are rich, there are ships, there is the sea. But consider whether, when you have been saved, you will not regret every day that you did not choose death over safety. As for me, she says, her voice firm, unwavering. I agree with the old saying, royalty is a fine burial shroud. Silence follows. Absolute. Complete. Even the seasoned generals and advisors, men who have faced battlefields, revolts, and sieges, feel the weight of her words. They understand in a way that logic cannot explain. To flee now is survival. To stay is to meet history with courage. And courage, they realize, is not distributed equally. Some are born into it, others find it when everything else is lost. Theodora has always known it. Justinian exhales. He looks at her, sees not the actress of his youth, not the scandal that once made senators sneer, but the empress, the strategist, the woman who has survived every challenge thrown at her by a world designed to destroy her. He sees the empire itself in her eyes, and he knows what must be done. Cancel the evacuation, he says quietly at first, then louder, commanding the room. We stay. We fight. Outside, Constantinople is a city in flames, 1,000 years of history consumed by fire and rage. Inside, the emperor and empress stand together, a single decision reversing the tide of collapse. The riots will rage, the fires will burn, thousands will die, but the empire, the last remnant of Rome, will endure, because one woman refused to bow to fear. This is Theodora. From the backstreets of Constantinople to the center of imperial power. From the child performer laughed at in the hippodrome to the voice that saved an empire. And this is just the beginning. Forget the palace. Forget the gold. Forget the fires and the chaos of the Nika riots for a moment. We rewind 25 years. The year is around 500 AD. Constantinople is a city of contrasts, a jewel on the edge of Europe and Asia, built upon a peninsula and surrounded by walls that have never been breached. To the rich, it is magnificent. Marble palaces, golden domes, bustling marketplaces, spices from the east, silks from Alexandria. To the poor, it is a nightmare of narrow alleys, overcrowded homes, open sewers, and the constant threat of hunger, disease, or violence. This is where Theodora is born, the third daughter of Asius, a bear keeper in the hippodrome. Asius is not a trainer, he is a keeper. He feeds the bears, cleans their cages, and ensures the animals remain aggressive enough for the shows that will end with their deaths. It is dangerous, filthy work, the kind of job that brands a family as permanently low-class in a society obsessed with status. But for Asius, it is honest labor, and it is all his family has. He has 3 daughters. Commodore, the eldest, who is clever and quick-witted. Theodora, the middle child, small but serious, already showing a glimmer of the intelligence and resolve that will define her later. And Anastasia, the youngest, delicate and quiet. The family survives on meager wages, their lives dictated by the schedule of the hippodrome and the whims of its patrons. Then Asius dies. Perhaps it is disease, perhaps an accident with one of the bears. History is unclear. What is certain is that his death leaves 4 females without income in a society that values women based on their male protectors. Theodora's mother faces a brutal choice: starve or act. She remarries quickly, hoping her new husband can take Asius's place in the hippodrome's operations. But the Blues faction, which dominates the chariot races and animal games, already has someone else in mind for the position. They reject her husband, publicly, mockingly, humiliatingly. Desperate, her mother takes a bold step. She dresses her 3 daughters in supplicants' robes, the coarse, tattered garments of beggars, and parades them into the hippodrome during a packed event. Thousands of spectators watch as the girls beg for mercy, for a chance at survival, for their family's dignity. The Blues laugh, dismiss, ignore. But the rival faction, the Greens, sees opportunity. They accept her husband, placing him in a position not out of compassion, but because it humiliates their rivals. Theodora is only about 5 years old when she witnesses this public theater of powerlessness and manipulation. Old enough to feel the sting of rejection, old enough to recognize the fleeting mercy of strangers, old enough to understand the bitter truth of life. The world has no obligation to be kind, and survival is a skill learned early. Her mother's next decision is even more dangerous. She puts her daughters on stage. But this is no innocent children's theater. Byzantine theater in the 6th century is scandalous, raw, and socially condemned. The actresses, called mimi, occupy a space one step above prostitution. They perform satirical skits, dances, and sometimes sexually suggestive acts, all designed to amuse a hungry, rowdy audience. The church calls them daughters of the devil. Respectable citizens avert their gaze. A senator caught associating with an actress risks his career. Young Theodora begins at the bottom, serving as a dresser for her older sister, Commodore. She carries props, adjusts costumes, even helps Commodore on stage. The audience laughs at her small size, her solemnity, her uncanny ability to remain serious in the chaos of the performance. She grows up surrounded by this world of judgment, performance, and survival. Every laugh, every jeer, every whispered insult etches into her an early understanding of human nature. Who holds power, who seeks favor, who manipulates, who discards. By the time she reaches her mid-teens, Theodora is fully aware of her social ceiling. She is an actress, a mime, a public spectacle. Society tells her she can never marry a citizen, can never own property, and that if she bears children, they will be illegitimate. Respectability is forever barred to her. And yet, in this harsh reality, Theodora begins to learn the rules of survival. She watches, she listens, she calculates. Her first chance at independence comes in the form of Hykeblis, a governor appointed to Pentapolis in North Africa. He is seeking companionship, a mistress to accompany him. Theodora, recognizing opportunity, leaves Constantinople at around 16 or 17. She believes she is escaping the hippodrome, the scorn, the limits imposed on her. But instead, she enters another world of dependency, vulnerability, and danger. Hykeblis keeps her for about 4 years, and then, for reasons lost to history, boredom, independence, a new conquest, he abandons her. Alone, without money, without protection, she is cast into a foreign land. Being a single woman in 6th century North Africa is a death sentence. Theodora should not survive. Streets are unforgiving. Disease spreads unchecked. Violence is constant. Most women in her position perish within months. But Theodora does not. Somehow she survives. Hunger, fear, and desperation become her teachers. And during these lost years, something fundamental shifts. Sources are silent for 2 or 3 years. It is as if she vanishes from history itself. Some later accounts claim a religious awakening. She meets holy men and women who offer her guidance, theology, and perspective beyond mere survival. Others suggest she is calculating, recognizing that her only path to power requires complete reinvention. Probably both are true. What is certain is that she emerges changed, disciplined, patient, intelligent, and fully aware that in Constantinople, reputation is everything. Her former life as an actress has marked her permanently. Her rebirth is strategic, deliberate, and essential. When she returns to Constantinople around 522 AD, she is unrecognizable. Gone is the wild, scandalous performer. In her place is a modest, quiet woman, spinning wool for income, attending church and dressing with respectability. The city whispers. People who remember her wonder. Is this the same Theodora who once danced, who once performed for ridicule and laughter? And more importantly, is she powerful now? Even in these early chapters of her life, Theodora's story is already extraordinary. She has learned to survive where others would perish. She has absorbed lessons in shame, power, and human cruelty. And she has begun to transform those lessons into a weapon, one that will soon alter the fate of an empire. The Hippodrome of Constantinople is unlike anything the world has ever seen. To stand there is to feel the pulse of the Byzantine Empire itself. Massive stone tiers rise into the sky, packed with tens of thousands of citizens whose voices, when combined, create a roaring tide that shakes the foundations of the city. Chariot races are not mere entertainment. They are life and death, politics and power, an expression of the city's soul. And in the shadows of these grand events, in the damp animal pens where the smell of blood and fur mixes with sweat and dust, Theodora's story unfolds. By the time she is 7, Theodora has become a regular presence on the stage. At first, she is invisible to most of the audience, a tiny figure carrying props for her older sister, Commodore, or adjusting her costume. But she learns quickly. Every laugh, every sneer, every misplaced cheer teaches her about human nature. She observes who commands attention, who is ignored, who can manipulate the crowd with a glance or a gesture. By her early teens, Theodora herself begins performing. She steps into the roles of the Mimi, the actresses whose lives are constantly under scrutiny, whose every move is a mix of art and survival. The stage is a brutal teacher. Performances combine comedy, social satire, and sometimes sexual provocation. Acts are short, often crude, designed to evoke laughter, gasps, or shock. The audience is unforgiving. Every misstep is punished with ridicule. Every success brings fleeting acclaim, quickly replaced by new demands. Theodora grows small but serious, her movements precise, her expressions controlled. She becomes adept at reading the room, understanding the desires and fears of her spectators. She notices patterns in behavior, which patrons can be flattered, which are easily offended, which are dangerous when crossed. These early observations form the foundation of a skill set few in Constantinople, men or women, can match. The ability to see people not as friends or enemies, but as variables in a system to be understood, influenced, and, when necessary, manipulated. But her life as an actress is not glamorous. Society's contempt is relentless. The law limits what she can do. Respectable men cannot marry her. She cannot own property. If she bears children, they will carry the stigma of illegitimacy. Church authorities denounce her existence. Theodora feels these boundaries as acutely as physical pain. And yet, she learns to use them to her advantage. She cannot climb through conventional routes, so she develops alternative strategies. Persuasion, observation, subtle influence, and a quiet, unwavering composure that draws attention without inviting direct attack. It is also a time of profound danger. Competition among performers is fierce. Rivalries can turn violent. Disgruntled patrons or jealous colleagues might set traps, spread rumors, or incite physical confrontations. And for girls like Theodora, young and alone, the stakes are always life or death. The hippodrome, for all its spectacle, is a crucible. It burns away weakness and leaves behind those who can endure, who can calculate, who can transform humiliation into opportunity. Theodora's family life continues to be precarious. Her mother manages what little income they can earn, constantly negotiating with sponsors, patrons, and faction leaders. The Blues and Greens, originally chariot racing factions, have extended their reach into almost every aspect of public life. Their influence is felt even in the backstage corridors where Theodora prepares for performance. The family's survival depends not only on talent but on understanding which faction is dominant, which favors them, and which is willing to exploit or betray them. Through these trials, Theodora develops a quiet resilience. She learns patience, endurance, and the importance of appearance. She observes power not as something granted, but as something seized through perception, strategy, and, when necessary, ruthlessness. She notices how fear shapes behavior, how people defer to authority they respect, how others crumble when challenged. These lessons, learned under the unforgiving lights of the hippodrome, will guide her every decision as she ascends the ranks of Byzantine society. Even in this constrained world, there are moments of small victories. A well-timed gesture draws laughter. A clever response silences ridicule. Theodora begins to cultivate a presence that commands attention not through force, but through precision, intelligence, and control. She is growing into a woman who understands that influence is as powerful as brute strength, and that survival is only the first step toward mastery. But the stage is also a harsh teacher of limits. She understands fully that, in the eyes of society, her choices are forever constrained. She cannot marry a senator. She cannot own land. She cannot participate in public office. These barriers are not theoretical. They are concrete, enforced by law, social norms, and the constant scrutiny of every adult in the city. And yet, Theodora is learning to see beyond them. She begins to imagine a life where these limitations can be challenged, where intelligence, strategy, and courage can carve a path where none exists. The hippodrome shapes her body and mind alike. She learns to move with purpose, to stand tall despite scorn, to maintain composure under pressure. She learns to read a crowd, anticipate reactions, and act decisively when opportunities present themselves. Theodora absorbs these lessons not as theory, but as survival skills. Every performance is a training ground. Every insult is a lesson. Every laugh, cheer, or jeer is data to be analyzed and stored for future use. By the end of her adolescence, Theodora is no longer just a performer. She is a strategist, a survivor, a young woman with a mind sharper than any blade in Constantinople. She has internalized the truth that society will punish her for her birth and profession. But she has also learned that power can be claimed by those clever enough to bend the rules, patient enough to wait for the right moment, and bold enough to seize opportunity when it arrives. This period of her life, filled with humiliation, performance, and constant threat, becomes the foundation of the woman who will one day command the emperor himself. The hippodrome does not just train her body. It trains her mind, her instincts, and her understanding of human behavior in a world where the stakes are always survival and the rules are unforgiving. In the streets, alleys, and stages of Constantinople, Theodora learns the first lesson of power. It is not granted, it is taken. And every observer of her small, serious figure might not have noticed it yet, but the child who carries props today is learning the skills that will one day save an empire. By the time Theodora reaches 16, the constraints of Constantinople weigh on her like iron chains. The hippodrome has taught her everything it can: how to read a crowd, anticipate reactions, manipulate perceptions, endure humiliation. But the lessons are limited to entertainment and survival in a society that will never grant her legitimacy. Her family has no wealth, no social standing, and no protection beyond the precarious favor of the Greens. For Theodora, there is no future within these walls. The city has taught her one undeniable truth: to survive is not enough. She must seize her own destiny. Opportunity comes in the form of a man named Heceblis. He is a governor appointed to Pentapolis in what is now Libya. He seeks companionship, a mistress to accompany him in his new post. A life of comfort, status, and security far from the judgmental eyes of Constantinople. For many, such a situation would feel like a release, a chance to escape hardship. For Theodora, it is an opportunity to begin shaping her life beyond survival, to gain a foothold in a world that has previously been closed to her. She leaves Constantinople at 16 or 17, her mind alight with cautious hope. She believes she is escaping the hippodrome, the derision, the permanent social stigma of being an actress. Yet, in this new environment, she discovers a different kind of vulnerability. Heceblis, as a governor and a man accustomed to power, holds all the authority. She is dependent on his protection, his wealth, and his attention. And though the living conditions are far superior to the alleys of Constantinople, the danger has not disappeared. It has simply changed form. For 4 years, Theodora lives under Heceblis's control. The historical sources provide little detail about the nature of this arrangement, leaving room for speculation. Was it a life of relative comfort, or a gilded cage of manipulation and restriction? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps Heceblis valued her companionship only so long as she remained convenient, pliable, and obedient. Whatever the reality, the lesson is clear. Survival in a man's world requires constant awareness, adaptability, and a willingness to navigate ambiguity. Then, abruptly, it ends. Heceblis abandons her. History does not record his motives. Perhaps he grew bored. Perhaps Theodora's intelligence and independence threatened his authority. Perhaps a new conquest drew his attention. Whatever the reason, he leaves her in a foreign land, without money, without protection, without allies. Alone, she faces the cruelest test of her life. A single woman in 6th century North Africa is a target. There is no legal protection, no social safety net. Hunger, disease, and violence are constant threats. Most women in her position would perish within months. Yet Theodora survives. Somehow, against all odds, she navigates the dangers of the streets, the hostility of strangers, and the unyielding challenges of survival. These lost years, roughly 2 to 3 in total, are unrecorded by contemporary sources, as if history itself pauses to watch and marvel at her endurance. Some later accounts, sympathetic to her rise, claim she experienced a religious awakening during this period, meeting holy men and women who offered guidance, wisdom, and a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. Others suggest a more pragmatic explanation. Theodora recognized that she needed a complete reinvention to escape her past and secure a future. Perhaps it was both a combination of spiritual insight and calculated strategy. What is certain is that Theodora emerges from Africa transformed. Gone is the wild, impulsive girl who once performed on the hippodrome stage. In her place is a woman of discipline, patience, and precision. She returns to Constantinople not as a performer, not as a scandal, not as an object of derision, but as a quiet, respectable figure. She spins wool for income, a simple and honorable profession. She attends church regularly, observing rituals with care and humility. She dresses conservatively, speaking thoughtfully, weighing each word for impact. Every action is deliberate, every gesture measured. Her transformation is strategic. The Byzantine world is unforgiving. Reputation is the currency of power, and Theodora knows she has spent years accumulating debt in that currency. Her prior life as a mimi, her time dependent on Haikeblis, her visibility in the hippodrome, all of it marks her permanently. But she has learned to navigate perception, to understand the psychology of observers, and to craft a new identity that commands respect. She does not explain her absence, her time in Africa, or her past indiscretions. She simply exists disciplined, controlled, and watchful. It is during these years of reinvention that Theodora develops the qualities that will define her reign: intelligence, strategic foresight, patience, and the capacity to endure social scorn without compromise. She has internalized the harshest lessons of her youth: that society punishes women without protection, that dependence is dangerous, that visibility can be a weapon or a curse. These lessons, forged in the fires of abandonment and survival, will become her tools as she prepares to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics. And yet, despite the discipline and care, there is a spark within her that remains unquenched. Theodora has survived every challenge thrown at her by a world designed to crush her, and in that survival lies a quiet confidence. She understands power not as a birthright, but as a prize to be claimed, as a game to be played with intelligence, patience, and precision. Every insult endured, every humiliation survived, every danger navigated adds to her understanding of the world and her place within it. By the time she is ready to return to Constantinople around 522 AD, Theodora is a study in controlled power. She is no longer the street performer, no longer the abandoned mistress. She is a woman with a plan, a vision, and the discipline to execute it. Every movement, every word, every interaction is calculated to build respect, to reshape perception, to create opportunities. The city that once ridiculed her will soon see her in a new light, quietly, strategically, and inexorably. In these formative years of exile and survival, Theodora has learned the ultimate lesson: to endure is to prepare, and to prepare is to seize power. She is ready for the next phase of her life, the phase that will bring her face to face with Justinian, the man who will become her partner, and the stage upon which she will begin her ascent to the throne. After years of exile and survival in North Africa, Theodora returns to Constantinople, and she is unrecognizable. The wild, impulsive girl who once danced and performed in the hippodrome has been replaced by a woman of calculated poise. She moves quietly, carefully, every action deliberate. Her life has become a careful choreography of appearance and behavior, a silent statement to a society that once condemned her. She does not rush back into the public eye. She does not announce her return. She returns as one who understands that power is not given. It is claimed through perception, patience, and strategic presence. The streets of Constantinople are familiar but no longer threatening. The hippodrome looms in the distance, a constant reminder of her past humiliation and the rigid social hierarchy she once could not escape. But Theodora has learned to navigate these streets with subtlety. She rents a small house near the imperial palace, a location chosen not for its grandeur but for its proximity to power. From this vantage, she can observe the political currents of the city while remaining discreet. Her home is modest, her furnishings simple, her actions quiet. This is intentional. She does not want attention, she wants respect, earned slowly, imperceptibly. Her daily life is disciplined. She spins wool, an unremarkable but respectable occupation for a woman in Byzantium. Each thread she twists and weaves is a symbol of control, of self-reliance, of the deliberate construction of a life that cannot be torn apart by circumstance. She attends church regularly, a space that allows her to blend piety with observation. She studies the faces of the wealthy, the noble, and the clergy, learning their habits, their alliances, their fears. Every sermon, every ritual, every whispered conversation is noted and stored in her mind, building a mental map of influence and power that few could ever hope to match. Theodora's reinvention is not limited to behavior. She has altered her presence, her appearance, her voice. Gone is the provocative performer. In her place is a woman who commands attention without demanding it. Her posture is poised, her gaze steady, her speech careful. She has learned the value of restraint. She does not reveal her intelligence all at once, does not display her ambitions openly. Instead, she cultivates a quiet aura of dignity, one that draws curiosity and respect even from those who would scorn her past. Her reputation is fragile. Constantinople has not forgotten her past as an actress, and rumors linger, whispered in noble halls, repeated in marketplaces, carried through the city like invisible smoke. She cannot erase what has been seen or said, but she can redefine herself. Every interaction is a careful negotiation, a test of perception. She learns to command authority through subtlety, to influence without overt confrontation, to survive in a society that would happily destroy her if given the opportunity. During this period, Theodora also begins to cultivate relationships that will be crucial for her rise. She observes influential figures at church, in markets, and near the palace. She notes patterns of loyalty, the alliances and rivalries that define the city's political landscape. She understands that to rise, she must navigate these networks strategically, choosing friends, allies, and protectors with care. Her mind, honed by years of survival and exile, is now a weapon as sharp as any sword in Justinian's army. It is in this context of careful preparation that she meets Justinian. The historical sources are vague. Some suggest it was at church, others hint at a formal introduction by court officials, but what matters is what happens next. Justinian, nephew and heir to Emperor Justin, is a man of brilliance and ambition, obsessed with law, theology, and administration. He is 40 years old, already groomed for power, and yet he cannot ignore the presence of Theodora. There is something in her composure, her intelligence, and her quiet authority that captures his attention. Their initial interactions are measured. Justinian observes her, noting the subtlety of her movements, the precision of her speech, the calm in her gaze. Theodora, for her part, is careful not to reveal more than necessary. She has learned that in Byzantium every word, every gesture is scrutinized. Reputation is a currency more valuable than gold. She does not seek to seduce, to provoke, or to flaunt her past. Instead, she simply exists as a woman transformed, disciplined, perceptive, and aware of her potential. This period also marks a shift in Theodora's understanding of power. She recognizes that influence can be exercised quietly, that survival requires patience, and that reputation can be reshaped with careful strategy. Every glance, every measured smile, every discreet word is a step toward reclaiming a life that was once constrained by social stigma and dependence. She is no longer at the mercy of others. She is learning to navigate, manipulate, and command the currents of power that flow invisibly through Constantinople. By the time she is fully reintegrated into the city, Theodora has achieved a remarkable transformation. She has survived abandonment, poverty, and scorn. She has learned the lessons of human behavior, politics, and perception, and she has prepared herself for the next stage. A direct encounter with the man who will become her partner, her equal, and the future emperor of Byzantium. Her return to Constantinople is not just a physical homecoming. It is a rebirth, a strategic positioning, and the quiet beginning of a journey that will soon alter the course of history. The city that once mocked her now holds the stage upon which she will rise, not as a performer, but as a woman of influence, intellect, and indomitable will. Theodora's return to Constantinople is quiet, deliberate, but it does not go unnoticed. In the corridors near the imperial palace, whispers ripple through the marble halls. She is no longer the girl of the hippodrome, nor the abandoned mistress of North Africa. She is poised, composed, and quietly commanding. Every movement, every glance, every word is calculated to reshape perception. And it is in this measured presence that she encounters Justinian. The sources are unclear on the exact circumstances of their meeting. Perhaps it occurs at a church service, where she attends regularly, her eyes lowered, her demeanor modest. Perhaps a courtier introduces them, intrigued by the transformation of the former performer. Perhaps it is a chance encounter in the streets or the marketplace. What matters is not the method, but the effect. Justinian, nephew and heir of Emperor Justin, is immediately captivated. Justinian is 40 years old, a man of exceptional intellect and ambition, obsessed with law, theology, and the mechanics of governance. He has been groomed his entire life for power, trained to enforce order, maintain tradition, and uphold the authority of the Roman legacy in the East. And yet, in the presence of Theodora, he sees something he has not encountered in any noblewoman or courtier. She is intelligent, composed, and enigmatic, her gaze steady and discerning. Her presence is quiet but undeniable, and it sparks a fascination in a man who has been trained to notice every detail, every potential threat, and every opportunity. Their initial interactions are careful and measured. Theodora does not reveal her past unless pressed. She does not flaunt her intellect, though it shines through in subtle ways. She listens, observes, and responds with precision. She understands the rules of the court. Every word, every action, every gesture is examined for meaning, loyalty, and ambition. She is aware of the dangers posed by society's judgment, by legal restrictions, and by the enmity of those who see her rise as a threat to their own status. Byzantine society has codified its prejudices. There are laws specifically forbidding senators from marrying actresses. This is not merely a social taboo. It is a legal barrier designed to maintain the hierarchy and preserve the perceived sanctity of imperial authority. A marriage to Theodora would be unprecedented, scandalous, and politically explosive. Yet Justinian is captivated. He is drawn not by lust, but by admiration and respect for her intelligence, composure, and insight. He sees in her a partner, a mind capable of complementing his own, a presence that commands attention in ways subtle but profound. Theodora, for her part, understands the stakes. She knows her past is a permanent mark, a stigma that will shadow her at every turn. She also recognizes the opportunity that Justinian presents, not just a path to personal security, but a chance to influence an empire, to exercise power where she was once powerless. She navigates their interactions with a careful balance of humility and assertion, allowing Justinian's admiration to grow while maintaining control over how she is perceived. Their relationship does not progress without resistance. Empress Euphemia, the current wife of Emperor Justin and a woman of humble origins herself, views Theodora with suspicion and hostility. She sees in Theodora not a fellow low-born woman rising above circumstance, but a threat to imperial dignity and her own position. Euphemia uses every tool at her disposal to block the union, lobbying senators, influencing the church, and leveraging her status to maintain the social order. For Theodora, this is a test of patience, strategy, and composure. She does not confront Euphemia directly. She endures, waits, and allows her presence, intelligence, and reputation to speak for themselves. During this period, Theodora continues her disciplined lifestyle. She spins wool, attends church, and moves quietly in the court's peripheral spaces. She observes, learns, and calculates. Every smile she gives, every conversation she enters, every interaction with courtiers or clergy is part of a larger strategy to navigate the treacherous waters of Byzantine politics. She is learning to exercise influence without overt power, to command attention without confrontation, and to transform every social obstacle into a potential advantage. Justinian's admiration for Theodora grows steadily. He begins to introduce her to select senators, cautious allies who can observe her composure, intellect, and demeanor. Many are scandalized. Others are curious. In a society rigidly stratified by birth and profession, her presence challenges every expectation. Theodora remains silent, patient, and watchful. She does not seek to justify herself or explain her past. She allows her actions, her demeanor, and her intelligence to gradually reshape perception. By the time Emperor Justin passes away and Justinian ascends to the throne, Theodora's influence has already begun to take root. She has transformed herself from a street performer to a figure of quiet authority, navigating the legal, social, and political barriers that once constrained her. The foundation has been laid for a partnership that will redefine imperial power, a relationship in which she will not merely be an observer, but an active, strategic participant. Their union, when it eventually occurs, will be unprecedented. It will challenge laws, social norms, and the expectations of the Byzantine elite. And yet, it will succeed, not because of privilege or wealth, but because Theodora has spent years cultivating the skills, discipline, and resilience necessary to seize the opportunity when it arrives. In these early meetings, she is learning to wield influence, to command respect, and to prepare herself for a role that society never intended for her. Theodora has returned to Constantinople not merely as a survivor, but as a strategist. Her life has been defined by hardship, exile, and meticulous self-reinvention. And as she stands near Justinian, observing the city, the court, and the world she is about to influence, she knows that every choice, every action, and every calculated word will determine not only her future but the future of the empire itself. The court of Constantinople is a theater of politics, where every whisper carries the weight of power and every gesture is scrutinized for hidden meaning. For years, Theodora has lived at the periphery of this stage, her past as an actress and street performer a permanent stain in the eyes of the nobility and the clergy. Even Justinian's growing admiration has not been enough to override the legal and social barriers that prevent a union between a senator and a former mimi. The most formidable obstacle, however, is not law alone. It is Empress Euphemia, the widow of Emperor Justin. A woman of humble origins, Euphemia herself rose from slavery to become empress. Yet she harbors a deep distrust, perhaps even resentment, toward Theodora. She views the former actress not as a kindred spirit but as a threat to the dignity of the imperial family, to the hierarchy she worked so hard to navigate. Euphemia wields every tool of influence at her disposal, lobbying senators, swaying clergy, and leveraging her prestige to block any attempt at marriage. For Theodora, these years of resistance are a test of patience and strategic discipline. She does not confront Euphemia openly, does not issue threats, and does not seek to justify herself. Instead, she continues her quiet, measured life. Spinning wool for income, attending church, observing the court, and studying human behavior with the keen precision that has always defined her. Every interaction is calculated, every word measured, every gesture deliberate. She understands that power in Byzantium is as much about perception as it is about law. She endures, waits, and positions herself to act when circumstances shift. In 523 AD, Euphemia dies. History does not reveal Theodora's personal feelings about this event, but the political implications are immediate and profound. With Euphemia gone, the primary social obstacle to marriage has vanished. The path that once seemed blocked by law, custom, and status now opens, and Justinian acts decisively. He approaches his uncle, Emperor Justin, with a request that will forever alter the legal landscape of Byzantium. The law, written explicitly to forbid senators from marrying actresses, must be changed. The Senate protests. The church objects. Nobles are horrified. They fear the precedent, the scandal, the implications for social order. Yet Justin, persuaded by the determination of his nephew and the exceptional qualities of Theodora, issues a decree. It allows repentant actresses who have abandoned their former lives to marry into the Senate. One woman, one law, written specifically for Theodora. The ruling is unprecedented, controversial, and meticulously worded, ensuring that the marriage is legally binding while justifying the exception to entrenched custom. The wedding, in 525 AD, is a spectacle of both power and defiance. Held in the Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom, the ceremony is lavish, public, and official. Nobles attend because they must, their faces masks of disgust, envy, or reluctant acceptance. But Theodora stands poised, composed, radiant not merely in beauty but in the quiet authority she has cultivated over years of careful discipline. She is no longer the girl of the hippodrome. She is now an imperial princess, a senator's wife, and a partner to the man who will soon become emperor. This marriage is more than personal. It is symbolic. It represents the triumph of intelligence, patience, and strategic self-reinvention over rigid social hierarchy and entrenched prejudice. For Theodora, it is both a culmination and a beginning. She has survived abandonment, poverty, social scorn, and exile. She has rebuilt her reputation from scratch. And now, she has secured a position from which she can exercise influence, shape policy, and participate in the governance of an empire. Even among the court, the shift is palpable. Senators and nobles who once whispered insults and dismissed her now regard her with a wary respect. Theodora has transformed the perception of her identity through years of careful observation, strategic action, and unyielding composure. She has become not merely acceptable but formidable. Her marriage to Justinian signals the beginning of a new phase in her life, one in which she will no longer be on the margins, but at the center of power. Yet the challenges are far from over. The Byzantine court is rife with factionalism, intrigue, and jealousy. Every noble, senator, and cleric must adjust to the reality that Theodora, once a figure of scandal, now occupies a position of authority. Every action she takes will be scrutinized, every word interpreted, every alliance questioned. But Theodora has spent her life preparing for this moment. She knows that influence requires patience, observation, and the ability to act decisively when opportunity presents itself. In this carefully orchestrated transformation, from abandoned street performer to respected Empress Theodora has demonstrated a rare combination of intelligence, strategic foresight, and resilience. The marriage does not merely secure her position. It validates the years of survival, reinvention, and calculated risk that have brought her to this point. She is no longer constrained by circumstance or social prejudice. She has carved a path to power, one that few in Constantinople could have imagined possible. As Theodora stands beside Justinian in the Hagia Sophia, the weight of history presses upon her. The city that once mocked her, the society that sought to confine her, the legal and social structures that constrained her, all have been navigated, challenged, and overcome. This is the moment when she transitions from survival to authority, from observer to participant, from outsider to central figure in the governance of the Byzantine Empire. Theodora's journey to this point has been extraordinary. From the backstreets of Constantinople to the stage of the hippodrome, from abandonment in Africa to careful reinvention, she has endured and learned. And now, standing in the heart of the empire, she is poised to wield influence, shape policy, and begin the ascent to the power she will one day exercise alongside Justinian. The imperial court is a place of constant calculation, where every movement is observed, every word analyzed, and every alliance scrutinized. For years, Justinian has been groomed for power, trained to enforce law, manage the administration, and preserve the legacy of Rome in the East. Yet when Emperor Justin dies, the stakes of leadership shift from preparation to action. The responsibility to rule, to stabilize, and to shape the empire now rests fully upon Justinian's shoulders. And by his side stands Theodora, a woman whose past has been scandalized, whose reputation has been questioned, and whose influence has been quietly cultivated for years. The transition is not ceremonial. It is deliberate, legal, and unyielding. Justinian ascends to the throne, assuming the mantle of authority that carries not only prestige but the full burden of governance. Constantinople watches, the city and its factions waiting to see whether the new emperor will prove capable or falter. His presence is formidable, his mind sharp, yet history is about to reveal that true power lies not in titles or law alone, but in the partnership he has forged with Theodora. Theodora's role is immediate and substantial. She does not exist merely as an ornament to the throne, a decorative figure to smile and wave while men govern. She sits beside Justinian in council meetings, observes military appointments, influences judicial decisions, and participates in policy deliberations. Her knowledge of human behavior, her understanding of perception, and her strategic intellect, honed through years of survival, observation, and reinvention, become invaluable. The court reacts with a mixture of awe, envy, and disdain. Senators and nobles who once ridiculed her, who whispered insults about her past as an actress, must now reckon with her authority. Her influence is subtle yet pervasive. Decisions made in the council, suggestions offered in private, and insights whispered at strategic moments shape the direction of the empire in ways that leave even the most seasoned courtiers uncertain of their position. Their coins are minted together, a symbol of shared sovereignty. Imperial documents name them jointly as rulers, reinforcing Theodora's authority and legitimizing her role in governance. But this is not symbolic power. Justinian trusts Theodora's judgment completely. He consults her on military strategy, legal reforms, foreign diplomacy, and religious policy. Her voice carries weight equal to his, a reality that disrupts centuries of tradition and challenges the established hierarchy of the Byzantine court. Theodora's influence extends beyond the palace. She recognizes that laws and policies are only effective when enforcement is coupled with public perception. She begins to advocate for reforms, particularly in the protection of women and vulnerable populations. Her personal experiences, the humiliation, vulnerability, and danger she endured as a young woman, inform her decisions. She understands exploitation, coercion, and social prejudice in ways that few men in the court could comprehend. This partnership between Justinian and Theodora is unprecedented. The emperor is brilliant, meticulous, and deeply knowledgeable about law and administration. The empress is strategic, perceptive, and socially astute. Together, they create a balance that strengthens the empire. Their shared authority is a combination of intellect, discipline, and mutual trust, a dynamic that sets the stage for reforms, political stability, and the expansion of influence across the Byzantine world. Yet challenges remain. The Byzantine court is rife with intrigue, factions, and competing interests. Senators are wary, generals question decisions, and religious leaders are often at odds with policy. Theodora navigates this landscape with the patience and precision that have defined her life. She observes, calculates, and acts strategically, understanding that subtle influence often outweighs overt confrontation. Her ability to anticipate reactions, manipulate perception, and guide outcomes becomes a critical asset for the empire. As co-ruler, Theodora begins to assert her vision for governance. She advocates for laws protecting women from coercion and forced prostitution, establishes charitable institutions for the disadvantaged, and supports minority religious communities. Each initiative is carefully planned, leveraging her influence without overstepping the boundaries of propriety. Theodora's power is exercised quietly but decisively, reshaping the empire from within while avoiding unnecessary confrontation with entrenched elites. The ascension to power also solidifies the bond between Justinian and Theodora. Their partnership is not based solely on affection or loyalty, but on mutual recognition of ability. Justinian relies on her judgment, trusts her insights, and values her strategic perspective. Theodora, in turn, exercises her influence with awareness, discipline, and precision, understanding the delicate balance between authority and perception. Together, They form a governing duo capable of navigating the complex and volatile environment of Byzantine politics. Theodora's transformation is complete. From the streets of Constantinople, the Hippodrome, and the perilous exile in Africa, she has emerged as a co-ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the world. Her life has been defined by survival, reinvention, and strategic calculation. Now, with the empire in her hands alongside Justinian, she begins the process of reshaping Byzantine society, implementing reforms, and exercising influence that will resonate for decades. Her story, however, is far from over. The challenges of governance, factional unrest, and societal expectations will test her in ways that no stage performance or personal survival could have prepared her for. Yet Theodora is ready. She has faced abandonment, humiliation, and exile. She has mastered the art of perception, the strategy of influence, and the resilience required to survive in a hostile world. Now, she applies these lessons to the governance of an empire, beginning a period of shared authority that will leave an indelible mark on history. Power, once acquired, demands mastery. For Theodora, co-ruler beside Justinian, this is not merely a matter of titles or ceremony. The Byzantine Empire is vast, complex, and fragile, and ruling it requires more than law and inheritance. It demands strategy, influence, and the courage to act where others hesitate. In these early years, Theodora begins shaping the empire with a precision forged through decades of survival, observation, and meticulous calculation. Her first focus is on reform. The vulnerabilities she experienced as a child and as a young woman inform her policies. She knows the dangers women face when they lack protection, the exploitation inherent in social systems that condone prostitution and coercion, and the precarious legal status of those born outside the traditional social hierarchy. She enacts reforms designed to protect women from being forced into prostitution, to give them legal rights in marriage and divorce, and to ensure that children born under socially marginalized circumstances are granted recognition and some measure of protection. The Byzantine nobility, predictably, resists. Senators and officials, accustomed to male dominance and rigid hierarchy, resent being challenged by a former actress. Yet Theodora has learned patience, discretion, and subtlety. Her directives come quietly, implemented through trusted agents and allies. Orders are executed without public confrontation, so the reforms appear inevitable, even natural, rather than imposed by a woman whose reputation they despise. Her influence extends to judicial and administrative appointments. She observes the court and the bureaucracy like a chessboard, noting where alliances lie, where weaknesses exist, and where strategic interventions can shift the balance of power. Senators who previously mocked her find their authority challenged, often quietly but decisively. A judge who resists her directives is investigated and removed. A general who undermines her influence is reassigned or dismissed. Theodora's actions are not arbitrary. They are calculated, precise, and strategically timed to consolidate her position and ensure the implementation of her policies. Religious politics also become a domain of her influence. The Byzantine Church is divided, with factions arguing over theology, ritual, and orthodoxy. Justinian supports the orthodox position, yet Theodora quietly protects Monophysite Christians, a minority sect facing persecution. She provides refuge, influences appointments, and shields communities from violence. This is a calculated risk. Religious disputes can spark riots, civil unrest, and rebellion. Yet Theodora understands the value of building a loyal base, creating networks of support that extend beyond the palace and the court. Her actions in religious politics are strategic, balancing risk with the potential to expand influence and secure alliances in unexpected quarters. Theodora's influence is not limited to policy and reform. It extends to the very perception of imperial authority. She understands the power of presence, perception, and symbolism. Coins bear her image alongside Justinian's, a declaration of shared sovereignty. Documents list them jointly as rulers. The nobility, forced to acknowledge her authority, begins to adapt, whether through reluctant acceptance or careful obedience. Her presence reshapes the court and the broader society, signaling that power is no longer confined to birthright or gender alone. Her methods are subtle yet effective. She does not seek public spectacle. She does not issue grand proclamations. Instead, she operates through networks, influence, and strategy. Decisions are guided by her observations of human behavior, her understanding of fear, ambition, and loyalty. Those who underestimate her discover, often too late, that she has orchestrated outcomes with precision, patience, and foresight. Theodora's power is pervasive yet invisible, a quiet authority that penetrates every level of governance. By the middle of Justinian's reign, Theodora has established herself as an indispensable partner in governance. Her reforms improve the lives of thousands, particularly women and marginalized groups. She strengthens the legal system, provides avenues of protection for the vulnerable, and ensures that her influence shapes not only immediate policy, but the long-term structure of Byzantine society. Her presence alters the dynamics of the court, creating a new model of shared imperial authority that challenges centuries of tradition. Theodora's actions also send a clear message to her opponents. She is not to be underestimated. Senators, generals, and religious leaders who once dismissed her face the consequences of resistance. Careers are ended quietly but effectively. Alliances are reshaped, loyalty is rewarded, and disobedience is punished. Her authority is exercised with a blend of intelligence, strategy, and decisiveness that few can anticipate, making her a formidable force within the empire. In shaping the empire, Theodora demonstrates that power is not merely the exercise of authority, but the ability to influence, guide, and reshape institutions through strategy, perception, and foresight. She combines the intelligence of an observer, the patience of a survivor, and the decisiveness of a ruler who understands both the fragility and the potential of the Byzantine state. Her reforms, protections, and strategic actions create a foundation for stability, prosperity, and resilience within the empire, even as she continues to navigate the complexities of court politics, religious divisions, and social prejudice. Through these years, Theodora's reputation evolves. To the women she protects and empowers, she becomes a savior and role model. To the Monophysite communities she shields, she is a protector and patron. To the nobility who resist her, she is a formidable strategist whose influence cannot be ignored. Her power is exercised quietly, effectively, and with precision. An authority built not on spectacle or brute force but on intelligence, calculation, and the lessons learned through a lifetime of survival against impossible odds. By the end of this period, Theodora has established herself not simply as the wife of an emperor but as a co-ruler, a strategist, and a reformer whose influence extends across every facet of Byzantine governance. She has turned her survival skills into political acumen, her discipline into strategic authority, and her past hardships into lessons that shape the future of an empire. In shaping the empire, Theodora has also shaped herself into a ruler whose intelligence, foresight, and indomitable will define her legacy for centuries to come. Byzantine society is not only a political machine, it is a theological battlefield. The empire is deeply intertwined with the church, and religious disputes are as volatile as military conflicts. Doctrinal debates over Christ's nature, liturgical practices, and ecclesiastical authority do more than define theology. They shape alliances, inflame factions, and have the power to ignite civil unrest. In this complex and dangerous arena, Theodora's intelligence, patience, and strategic acumen find a new field of influence. Theodora's engagement in religious politics begins quietly. She observes the court, the bishops, and the clergy, learning the power dynamics between the Orthodox majority and minority sections. She notes the prejudices, the loyalties, and the ambitions of religious leaders. For her, these observations are practical. Control over religious influence is a form of political power, and understanding the church is essential to safeguarding the empire and expanding her own authority. One of the most significant areas of her involvement is the protection of Monophysite Christians, a minority sect facing persecution for their belief that Christ has a single divine nature rather than a dual nature. While Justinian supports Orthodox positions, Theodora quietly provides sanctuary to Monophysite leaders, monks, and communities. She establishes networks of protection within the palace and across Constantinople, ensuring that religious persecution does not extend unchecked to these vulnerable groups. Her actions are discreet yet effective, demonstrating a mastery of both subtlety and strategy. This protection is not purely altruistic. Theodora understands the political advantage of cultivating loyalty among a religious minority. By shielding Monophysites, she creates a network of influence independent of Justinian's authority, ensuring that her power is not solely derived from her position as empress. Her support is strategic, securing allies, creating dependencies, and influencing religious appointments to favor those sympathetic to her policies. In doing so, she establishes a separate, loyal constituency within the empire, a base of support that can be mobilized in times of political crisis. Theodora also navigates the volatile relationship between the church and the state with remarkable precision. Religious disputes can erupt into riots, civil unrest, or even rebellion. Her interventions are calculated to protect minority groups while avoiding actions that could destabilize the empire. She advises on appointments, mediates conflicts, and ensures that her policies are implemented through trusted agents rather than public confrontation. Her influence is pervasive yet invisible, operating in the shadows of the political and religious hierarchy. Her involvement in religious politics extends to broader policy as well. She advocates for laws that ensure justice and protection within religious institutions, leveraging her authority to prevent abuse and corruption. Bishops and abbots who might oppose her find themselves strategically marginalized or replaced, not through spectacle but through carefully orchestrated administrative action. Theodora understands that authority in Byzantium is as much about perception and control as it is about legal power, and she wields her influence accordingly. Theodora's actions have both immediate and long-term consequences. Her protection of minority religious communities preserves faith traditions that might otherwise have been extinguished. The Monophysite communities she shields survive persecution, maintain continuity, and eventually contribute to the enduring presence of churches such as the Coptic Orthodox, Syrian Orthodox, and Armenian Apostolic traditions. Her influence ensures that religious diversity is maintained, even within an empire that is often intolerant of deviation from orthodox doctrine. Yet her engagement is not limited to minority protection. Theodora is deeply aware of the optics of power and perception. She cultivates an image of piety and moral authority, attending services, supporting charitable religious initiatives, and interacting with clergy in ways that reinforce her legitimacy. Her presence in religious affairs signals that she is not only an equal partner to Justinian in governance but also a moral and strategic guide in the empire's spiritual life. This mastery of religious politics requires balance. She must protect minorities without alienating the orthodox majority, support clerics without appearing to manipulate the church for personal gain, and act decisively without provoking rebellion. Theodora's success in this domain is a testament to her strategic mind, her patience, and her understanding of human behavior. She recognizes that religious influence, when wielded skillfully, strengthens both her authority and the stability of the empire. By the time the mid-530s arrive, Theodora has established herself as a formidable force in religious as well as political affairs. Her interventions in theological disputes, protection of minority sects, and influence over church appointments extend her authority far beyond the palace walls. She shapes policy, guides appointments, and secures loyalty, ensuring that her power is resilient, far-reaching, and independent of external approval. In this period, Theodora demonstrates that governance in Byzantium is not solely a matter of law or military might. Influence, strategy, and the careful cultivation of perception are equally essential. Through her engagement in religious politics, she ensures that her authority is both visible and invisible, pervasive yet subtle, respected yet feared. She consolidates power not through brute force, but through intelligence, observation, and calculated action, the hallmarks of her rule. Religious politics are dangerous, unpredictable, and often violent. Yet Theodora navigates them with skill, securing the loyalty of minority communities, influencing policy, and consolidating her authority. In doing so, she not only protects those who might otherwise be persecuted but also strengthens her own position, ensuring that the Byzantine Empire remains stable and that her influence is both enduring and undeniable. Constantinople, January 532 AD. The city is ablaze. Fires rage through wooden streets, reducing entire neighborhoods to ash. Smoke curls into the sky, acrid and suffocating, carrying with it the scent of burning homes, charred timber, and panic. Tens of thousands of citizens, blues and greens, once bitter rivals, now united in fury, flood the streets, chanting, rioting, and demanding vengeance. Public buildings, tax offices, and even the Senate are torched. The empire teeters on the brink of collapse, and the fate of history itself hangs by a thread. Inside the imperial palace, the tension is suffocating. Justinian and his council are barricaded, listening to the distant roar of the rioters. Smoke drifts through the open windows. The distant pounding of boots and the clamor of voices signal that control has been lost. The Senate suggests negotiation, concessions, even flight. Belisarius, Justinian's greatest general, surveys the harbor and calculates escape routes. Ships loaded with gold and provisions wait to whisk the emperor and his court to safety. For the first time in his life, Justinian falters. The weight of responsibility, the sheer scale of revolt, and the fear of personal annihilation press upon him. Every advisor recommends retreat. Survival seems possible, but at the cost of honor, legacy, and authority. Every man in the room can smell defeat, feel its inevitability. And then Theodora speaks. She has been silent until now, observing the men crumble before the roar of thousands outside. When she rises, her presence is commanding. She steps forward, her gaze fixed not on the advisors but on Justinian himself. Every movement is deliberate, every word measured, every gesture radiating authority born of decades of survival, struggle, and calculated action. If flight were the only means of safety, she says, her voice cutting through the panic like a blade. Still, I would not agree with you. The room goes silent. The words hang, heavy and sharp, like the toll of a bell. She continues, calm yet unyielding. Once a man has been born into this world, it is inevitable that he should die. But for one who has reigned, it is intolerable to become a fugitive. May I never be without this purple robe. May I never live to see the day when those who meet me do not call me Empress. If you wish to save yourself, my lord, there is no difficulty. We are rich, there are ships, there is the sea. But consider whether, when you have been saved, you will not regret every day that you did not choose death over safety. As for me, she says, steady, unwavering, I agree with the old saying, royalty is a fine burial shroud. Every man in the room feels the weight of her judgment. Belisarius, experienced in the art of war, understands the practical reality behind her words. Fleeing guarantees defeat. Staying guarantees a chance at victory. Justinian sees himself through her eyes, hesitant, fearful, ready to abandon everything he has built. And in that moment, he understands the cost of cowardice, the price of hesitation, and the value of courage tempered by strategy. Cancel the evacuation. He commands quietly at first, then louder. We stay. We fight. Theodora's speech has done more than inspire courage. It has altered the course of history. The rioters believe the empire will collapse. Yet the palace remains resolute. Belisarius immediately takes command of a small, professional force. Soldiers are ordered to secure exits to the hippodrome, not to arrest or negotiate, but to trap the rioters where their numbers cannot guarantee victory. Mundus, another general, brings reinforcements. The stage is set for confrontation. At the hippodrome, tens of thousands of blues and greens celebrate what they believe to be a victory. They crown Hypatius as emperor, assuming Justinian has fled. Yet as the soldiers block exits and systematically advance, chaos erupts. Rioters are overwhelmed, trapped, and slaughtered. The slaughter is brutal, precise, and devastating. Ancient sources claim 30,000 deaths. Even if the number is exaggerated, it remains one of the bloodiest days in Byzantine history. The floor of the hippodrome runs red. Bodies pile against barriers. Screams echo across the city, a grim testament to the consequences of rebellion. By the time the streets are cleared, Justinian's authority is restored. Hypatius is captured, his claim extinguished, and the city stabilizes. The fires will burn for weeks, neighborhoods destroyed, thousands dead, but the empire survives. And it survives because of one woman. Without Theodora's intervention, without her speech that combined moral authority, courage, and strategic foresight, Justinian would have fled. The rebels would have installed a rival emperor. Civil war might have followed. Persia and other external threats could have capitalized on the chaos. The Byzantine Empire, the last bastion of Roman continuity, might have fractured, and the trajectory of European history altered irreversibly. Theodora does not celebrate. She does not demand recognition. She understands that her role is to act decisively, quietly, and strategically. Her influence, however, is undeniable. From this point forward, senators, generals, and nobles understand that she is not merely the emperor's wife. She is a strategist, a force of authority, and a decisive actor whose judgment can determine life or death, not only for individuals but for the empire itself. The Nika riots mark a turning point in Theodora's life and legacy. She has demonstrated that power is not granted, titles are not sufficient, and courage is not abstract. Survival is not enough. Influence, decisiveness, and the ability to act where others falter are what shape history. Through her intervention, she saves Justinian, restores the empire, and secures her position as co-ruler with authority recognized, feared, and respected. From the ruins of Constantinople, Theodora emerges not just as an empress, but as the defining presence in a restored empire. Her voice, measured, fearless, and strategic, becomes the symbol of stability, courage, and the unyielding will that preserves the Byzantine state. In the chaos of fire, revolt, and death, she demonstrates a mastery of power that few in history will ever match. The fires of the Nika riots have been extinguished, but their aftermath leaves a city scarred, traumatized, and shaken. Constantinople is a place of mourning and fear, yet the palace stands intact, the emperor's authority restored. For Justinian, the crisis has revealed both the fragility of power and the extraordinary influence of the woman at his side. For Theodora, the events mark a turning point. Her authority is no longer emergent or tentative. It is absolute, recognized by those who would have dismissed her only days before. The immediate task is consolidation. The political landscape is fractured, rife with factions emboldened by rebellion. Senators who once whispered against the throne are now aware of Theodora's presence as a decisive force in governance. Generals who doubted her judgment or influence are reminded, often with devastating clarity, of the consequences of resistance. Her methods are precise, strategic, and discreet. She does not make dramatic public scenes. Instead, she works through networks, informants, and loyal administrators to ensure that opposition is neutralized quietly but effectively. A prominent general, John the Cappadocian, who had been one of Justinian's closest advisors, makes the mistake of publicly challenging Theodora's authority. Within days, he is framed for conspiracy, stripped of his position, and exiled to Egypt, where he is relegated to minor clerical work in a small church. A senator who insulted Theodora years before has his property seized, his family sent to distant provinces, and his career destroyed. Bishops who preach against her or oppose her policies are investigated for corruption and replaced with more cooperative figures. Each action is calculated, measured, and executed with precision. The message is unmistakable. Crossing Theodora has consequences. Her authority is reinforced through law and reform. Women's rights, previously limited and inconsistent, are expanded. She enacts measures to protect women from exploitation, coercion, and trafficking. Convents and homes for former prostitutes or performers are established, offering pathways to respectable, independent lives. The legal code is reshaped to offer protections in marriage and divorce, creating unprecedented social and legal safeguards for women in Byzantine society. Theodora's reforms are informed by experience. She understands the realities of powerlessness, vulnerability, and exploitation because she lived them. Her influence also extends to the administration of justice and military appointments. Officers and officials understand that disobedience, obstruction, or insult can result in sudden and irrevocable consequences. Authority, in Theodora's hands, is both protective and exacting. Her power is exercised with a balance of patience and decisiveness that renders her actions difficult to anticipate, creating both respect and fear among those who navigate the Byzantine court. Theodora's approach to power is nuanced. She does not seek spectacle. She cultivates influence quietly, ensuring that authority is sustained, systemic, and far-reaching. She monitors the court and the city through networks of informants, gaining insight into alliances, rivalries, and potential threats. She anticipates challenges before they arise, positioning loyal allies and neutralizing adversaries with precision. Her understanding of human behavior, acquired through years of observation and survival, allows her to manipulate outcomes without overt confrontation. The Nika riots, while catastrophic, serve as a catalyst for her authority. The men who counseled retreat, who hesitated in the face of crisis, are now reminded of her judgment, courage, and strategic mind. Senators and generals who doubted her capacity to influence policy recognize, through both fear and respect, that she is a force not to be ignored. Her authority is absolute, reinforced not merely by position but by demonstrated capability. Yet her consolidation of power is not purely punitive. Theodora also seeks stability and continuity. She strengthens networks of loyal administrators, ensures the implementation of reforms, and supports communities that have historically been marginalized. Her governance is both protective and strategic, blending enforcement with patronage, punishment with incentive. By doing so, she secures loyalty, reinforces her influence, and ensures that her authority is sustainable and respected. Religious politics remain an essential component of her power. Theodora continues to protect Monophysite Christians, supporting minority religious communities, while maintaining the favor of the Orthodox majority. She uses her influence over ecclesiastical appointments to balance factions, prevent rebellion, and strengthen her position. Her interventions are subtle but decisive, ensuring that her authority is felt across both secular and religious spheres. Through these actions, Theodora transforms the perception of power in Byzantium. She is no longer merely the emperor's wife. She is a ruler in her own right. Her influence touches law, governance, military appointments, social policy, and religious affairs. She has turned personal survival, intelligence, and resilience into tools of authority, creating a model of power that challenges social norms, redefines governance, and ensures her place as one of the most formidable figures in Byzantine history. By the end of this period, Theodora's authority is recognized, feared, and respected. She has mastered the art of influence, blending strategy, patience, and decisive action to consolidate power across every facet of the empire. The Nika riots, which could have destroyed her and the empire, instead served to solidify her position. Her reforms endure, her influence spreads, and her presence in the court ensures that the empire is governed not only through law and military might, but through intelligence, foresight, and calculated authority. Theodora's absolute authority is the product of a lifetime of survival, reinvention, and strategic acumen. From the gutters of Constantinople to the palace, from abandonment in Africa to the center of imperial power, she has transformed personal experience into political mastery. She is no longer merely an observer of history, she is a shaper of it, a force whose influence will reverberate across the empire, ensuring both stability and her enduring legacy. By the years following the Nika riots, Theodora's authority is unquestioned. Constantinople, scarred by fire and blood, is a city that has learned the cost of defiance. Yet Theodora does not wield her power merely to punish. She wields it to reform, protect, and shape the empire for generations to come. Her experience, born in the gutters, tested in exile, honed in survival, guides her every decision. Authority, she knows, is not merely exercised through fear but through strategic protection, reform, and foresight. One of Theodora's enduring legacies is her advocacy for women. She has experienced firsthand the vulnerabilities of women without legal or social protection. Many have been forced into prostitution, coerced into marriages that offer neither security nor respect, or denied rights within the legal system. Theodora systematically changes this. She enacts laws to protect women from forced prostitution and human trafficking, and she establishes convents and charitable homes where women can seek refuge and learn trades that provide independence. These institutions are revolutionary in 6th century Byzantium, offering avenues for survival, dignity, and opportunity that had previously been denied. Her influence extends into family law. Women's rights in divorce proceedings are expanded, giving wives protections that were previously impossible. Children born under socially marginalized circumstances receive recognition and some measure of legal protection. These reforms are not abstract ideals, they are informed by lived experience. Theodora knows the cruelty of vulnerability and the impact of social stigma. Her laws and reforms address these realities directly, leaving a tangible, lasting impact on Byzantine society. Political enemies learn quickly that crossing Theodora carries consequences. Generals, senators, and officials who challenge her authority find themselves dismissed, exiled, or stripped of power. These actions are executed quietly but effectively, ensuring compliance without the spectacle of public confrontation. By the time adversaries realize her reach, the consequences are already irreversible. Her authority is both protective and formidable, blending law, strategy, and perception into a system that secures her position while enforcing stability across the empire. Religious policy remains another arena where Theodora leaves her mark. She continues to protect Monophysite Christians, ensuring that minority communities have sanctuary, resources, and influence. Her interventions are strategic. She balances the Orthodox majority's dominance with protection for minority sects, cultivates loyalty among diverse groups, and strengthens networks of support across Constantinople. The lasting effects are profound. Monophysite communities survive centuries of persecution and evolve into enduring religious institutions, such as the Coptic Orthodox, Syrian Orthodox, and Armenian Apostolic churches. Millions of Christians trace their heritage to the protection Theodora provided. Beyond her reforms and protection of vulnerable populations, Theodora's presence shapes governance itself. Justinian relies on her judgment in all matters military, judicial, administrative, and theological. She sits in council meetings, influences appointments, and helps craft policy with precision. Decisions made under her guidance are strategic, effective, and enduring. Her influence extends beyond immediate administration, ensuring that her vision for the empire continues to shape Byzantium long after individual decrees are issued. Theodora also cultivates intelligence networks throughout the city, gathering information on noble households, bureaucratic positions, and military deployments. She anticipates challenges, navigates court intrigue, and positions allies strategically. Her power is exercised both visibly and invisibly, shaping outcomes while remaining elusive to her enemies. By understanding human behavior, leveraging perception, and acting decisively, Theodora establishes a model of governance that is as strategic as it is effective. As she ages, Theodora's influence remains absolute. Senators who once derided her, generals who questioned her judgment, and clergy who opposed her reforms all recognize her authority. Her presence is both feared and respected. The reforms she champions continue to protect the vulnerable. Her strategic influence secures loyalty and stability, and her example as a powerful female ruler sets a precedent for future Byzantine empresses. In 548 AD, Theodora falls ill. The historical sources suggest cancer, though details remain uncertain. She is approximately 48 years old. Justinian, devastated by the loss of his partner, mourns deeply. The empress who saved him during the Nika riots, who helped shape the empire's policies, who enforced law and order with strategic precision, is gone. Yet her legacy is indelible. Projects she initiated continue under Justinian's supervision. Laws she enacted remain in effect. Institutions she founded continue to protect women and vulnerable communities. Churches rebuilt after the riots, including the new Hagia Sophia, feature mosaics depicting her crowned in imperial purple, standing beside Justinian, an enduring symbol of her influence and equality in rulership. Theodora's life, from the backstreets of Constantinople to the halls of imperial power, is a testament to resilience, intelligence, and strategic mastery. She survives abandonment, scorn, and exile. She transforms her reputation, navigates the most perilous political landscapes, and exercises authority with foresight and precision. In doing so, she secures not only the empire's stability, but also a model of power and influence that challenges social norms and provides lasting protection for the marginalized. Her legacy is multifaceted: protector, reformer, strategist, co-ruler, and survivor. She changes the lives of ordinary citizens, shapes policy across the empire, influences religious communities, and establishes a precedent for female authority in Byzantine society. Through law, action, and example, Theodora ensures that her influence endures long after her death, shaping both the empire and the perception of women in positions of power. Theodora's death in 548 AD marked the end of her earthly influence, but it did not mark the end of her story. In the centuries that followed, history, shaped by men in positions of power, with vested interests in preserving social hierarchies, sought to erase, diminish, or tarnish her legacy. The most notorious attempt came from Procopius, a Byzantine historian whose contradictory accounts have shaped public perception for over a millennium. Procopius wrote two works that portray Theodora in entirely different lights. In his official histories, produced during her lifetime, he praises her intelligence, judgment, and influence. She is recognized as a capable empress, a trusted partner to Justinian, and a shrewd political strategist. These accounts present a woman whose life, skill, and vision significantly strengthened the empire. She is, in these texts, respected, formidable, and undeniably central to Byzantine governance. Yet Procopius's secret history, written in the shadows and hidden for centuries, tells a dramatically different story. Here, Theodora is portrayed as a manipulative, sexualized figure whose rise to power is framed as scandalous and morally corrupt. The work details her youth in humiliating, often degrading terms, her performances on the hippodrome stage, her alleged relationships, and her supposed manipulations of men in positions of authority. In this account, she is presented as a cautionary tale. A woman who reached too high, demanded too much, and defied the social order. The secret history is filled with misogyny, exaggeration, and personal vendetta. Procopius had reasons to resent Theodora. Her influence over Justinian directly affected his patrons and allies, and her authority challenged the patriarchal structures he represented. It is clear that the work was never intended to be a factual account but a personal attack, an attempt to undermine a powerful woman who could not be contained by tradition or law. For centuries, this version dominated the narrative. Scholars, historians, and storytellers repeated the sensationalized account of Theodora as a seductress, manipulator, and scandalous performer. Her decades of governance, reforms, protection of women, and strategic contributions to the empire were minimized or ignored. The empress who saved Constantinople during the Nika riots, who reshaped laws to protect vulnerable populations, and who established a precedent for female authority was reduced to a caricature, a moral lesson against ambition in women. Yet history is rarely so simple. By examining contemporary records, official documents, coins, legal codes, and surviving accounts of her actions, historians have gradually reconstructed a more accurate picture. Theodora was not a villain or a scandal. She was a survivor, a strategist, a reformer, and a co-ruler whose intelligence and foresight shaped the Byzantine Empire in ways Procopius's secret account cannot erase. Her influence was real, measurable, and lasting. The persistence of the secret history also demonstrates something about the threat she posed. Her life, her authority, and her reforms challenged entrenched social hierarchies. Men in positions of power feared her influence, the autonomy she exercised, and the precedent she set. By attempting to destroy her reputation, Procopius inadvertently ensured her immortality. The contradictions in his accounts force readers, centuries later, to question bias, examine evidence, and recognize the exceptional nature of her life. Despite attempts to erase her, Theodora's impact endured. Her reforms influenced Byzantine law for generations. Her protections ensured the survival of minority religious communities, and her model of co-rule inspired future empresses to exercise authority rather than serve as ornamental figures. Even centuries later, her life continues to be studied, debated, and admired, not as a sensational story, but as a testament to resilience, intelligence, and strategic power. The story of Theodora is ultimately a study in survival, reinvention, and influence. From the gutters of Constantinople to exile in Africa, from the stage of the Hippodrome to the imperial palace, she learned to navigate impossible circumstances, to transform vulnerability into authority, and to wield power with precision and foresight. Her life challenges assumptions about gender, hierarchy, and the nature of influence. It demonstrates that true power is not given, inherited, or conferred by society. It is claimed through intelligence, strategy, courage, and endurance. For 1,400 years, history tried to diminish her, to cast her as scandalous, to erase her achievements. Yet Theodora persists, not as a legend, not as a caricature, but as a historical figure of extraordinary resilience and agency. She reshaped laws, protected the vulnerable, influenced emperors, and preserved the empire at a moment of existential crisis. Her legacy endures in the institutions she created, the reforms she enacted, the precedent she set, and the countless historians now uncovering the truth beyond the propaganda and slander. Theodora's story is a reminder that history is not merely written by victors. It is shaped by those with the courage, intelligence, and vision to leave a mark, even in the face of prejudice and opposition. She is a survivor in every sense, surviving social scorn, exile, political intrigue, and even attempts to erase her from memory. And because of that, she remains unforgettable.